Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for attending tonight's meeting of the Children and Young People Overview and Scrutiny panel. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to the meeting. Take this opportunity to remind everyone to treat all officers and fellow councillors with respect. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We will go to item number 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Sherry-Ann Bim and Councillor Caroline Charles will be joining us online. Are there any further apologies? No, thank you very much. I will move on to item 2, declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations to be made at this time? No. Lovely, thank you very much. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting? Agreed, thank you all very much. Item number 4, the budget and business plan. I will hand over to the cabinet member. Thank you, Councillor Alan Brittis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting me to this meeting. Can I also thank my cabinet members who are here for the particular portfolios they hold, which are pertinent to tonight's meeting. Thank the directors and the officers who are also here, and remind ourselves this is the second round of scrutiny, and thank everyone here, all councillors here from all parties, for their input in the first round and for their forthcoming input tonight to tonight's meeting. I really want to thank everyone for allocating their time, their thinking on this round today. So I'll hand over to the directors, Assad and Bev, and over to them.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. As Councillor British said, we're here to scrutinise CYP and the MTFS. This is our second window of scrutiny sessions consulting on savings proposals. So this is the second set of those with 4 sessions in each, and this is the second session. In today's MTFS, you'll be scrutinising about £1.3 million worth of further savings. That's on top of the 7 million plus you reviewed in November. So taking all of this into account, and with updates from the provisional settlement, which I'll come on to in a second, but also further adjustments to assumptions, that still does leave a further gap of £1.7 million to find ahead of February full council. So the provisional settlement landed on the 17th of December of last year. This is the first multi-year settlement in a decade, and that runs from 2026 to 2029. So there's been many changes to the way that the local government finance settlement has been presented due to the Fair Funding Review, reset of how the business rate system is based, consolidation of grants, and there are other changes as well. So the Fair Funding Review has resulted in some major changes to local authority grant shares, both positively and negatively. Based on the review, Merton comes out as relatively as low needs and highly resourced, and the settlement does reflect that in terms of a decrease in grant funding. So this does include plans for the fair funding allocation for each council in 26-27, comprised of the revenue support grant, local authority better care grant, and our baseline funding levels for business rates, as well as wider changes to that system. So on Fair Funding 2.0, the government states that fair funding will better align funding with the needs across the country, updating for the first time in a decade the formulas used to calculate local authorities' need for services relative to one another, as well as updating assessment of needs and acting as an equaliser for locally raised taxation. So this report is based on the most up-to-date information available up to the public of the local finance settlement provisional. However, the final budget report to Cabinet in February 2026 and to full council will be based on the final local government settlement, which has not yet been published, but it is also expected to include some major announcements around SEND funding, which I'll just come back to in a second. Is relevant to this panel. So figures in this report are based on those provisional figures and early initial analysis of those figures. It is extremely complex and far-reaching in terms of the way local government financial settlement has been, and it's very complicated in terms of the calculations and how funding is distributed. More complex than previous years, and we are still doing further analysis up until the settlement is published. and we will bring that update to full council. So the figures do remain draft until that settlement. We are expecting that either at the end of this month or at the beginning of next month. As I mentioned, we are waiting announcements on SEND reform and the treatment of both our historical DSG deficits, which this panel will be familiar with, but also what happens when the government statutory override of SEND deficits runs out at the end of 27-28. So there has been announcements at the last national budget around the government's plans for local authorities, including treatment of backward-looking deficits, but also what's going to happen beyond 27-28. That is quite critical for the sector, and particularly for Merton as well, as we are accruing a large deficit on our DSG, and it is crucial that there is an end to the unsustainable funding of this system and how it does work. So we are eagerly awaiting any recognition of that in the final settlement, but I believe there's also a wider SEND reform paper that's due to land this quarter, but we don't have a date for that. So to summarise, until the final settlement is announced, we will continue to evaluate the implications over the medium term, but also review our assumptions, and obviously there is still a remaining budget gap, which we will be putting forward further savings to Budget Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both to the Cabinet Member and the Director. I will start by taking questions on the MTFS report. Does anyone have questions on the MTFS report? I'll take questions in round of threes. Councillor Kirby, and then Councillor Hayes. I will take two to start with. Councillor Kirby, then Councillor Hayes.
Been here a long time, I don't even know which one to press. God. First of all, just to say it's a lot easier when you know you're going to get 3-year funding from the government, isn't it? So well done to that. I just wondered on page 453 with the virtual school, just wondering if you feel, how confident you feel this is achievable.
Councillor Hayes.
Yeah. Even with the additional savings, we're still considering at this second round a budget saving. There's still a gap. Are we confident that this gap can be closed before the Budget Council? Thanks.
Thank you, councillors. I think for Councillor Kirby's question, I'll hand over to the Director for Children's in a second. I'll take the second question if that's all right before I hand over. So in terms of confidence, just like to reiterate, and colleagues will know this from previous reports, we do have a very high rate of achievement of savings. So as of the latest financial monitoring report period 8, we're at 89% delivery of our savings in this year, and by the time that gets to the year end, we expect that to increase. And if you look back in previous years, it shows a consistent pattern. So as a local authority, we tend to put forward savings that are not only achievable, our process is robust internally. These are peer reviewed across the council, and they're also stress tested by finance. So I am very comfortable. We've already put forward, as I say, a significant amount in these 2 rounds, just over 8.3 million. So I think 1.7 is achievable, and as I say, we're at an advanced stage in terms of formulating them.
Now, could you give, based on what Asad has said, what's the mean for the last 3 years then? The mean.
Or the mean savings.
So, like, you know, what percentage wise? I know.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah, it will be rough, because I don't have the exact figures. It's around sort of 90% plus over 3 years. But even to add on to that, so where we don't make the full amount of savings in a year, we almost always deliver it in the next year and substitute it out. So it's very high rate. Thank you.
With regards to Councillor Kirby's question about the virtual school saving and how achievable it is totally achievable. We've looked at this very carefully in this way that we always do within children, lifelong learning and families when we are putting our savings together. We are looking again at maximising the grant funding that the virtual school receives for its statutory responsibilities, both with regards to children in care and those previously looked after, and those with children with a social worker. So we've looked at that very carefully, and we are certain that we're going to be able to achieve that.
Any further questions on the MTFS report? Councillor MacArthur, then Councillor Hall.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick one. In children's social care and family wellbeing, I understand that the savings in future years are predicated on getting future grants. What happens if they don't come?
Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to make a couple of points first. One, can I just say I'm quite disappointed that we're holding this committee meeting tonight when it clashes with the Holocaust Memorial Service. I feel quite sort of disrespectful that I'm not there. So that's a shame. I think because we know the date so far in advance, it could have been avoided. The second thing is I want to apologise. My hearing aid has gone on the blink, so I'm going to be relying on the subtitles quite a lot. The other thing is if you find I'm looking at my phone rather a lot, it's because I've put my notes on my phone. So that's hopefully not being disrespectful there. And finally, wanted to ask about a specific point in the budget on transport for children. Is this the time to ask that? Or are we waiting to go into the specifics of the savings?
We will go into the specifics. I will ask on the wider budget agenda. I briefly come to your first point about the Holocaust Memorial Night because I did make that mention myself to the scheduling. Last year I attended the Holocaust Memorial event. I've tried to attend every year that since I've been a councillor. I sat with Councillor MacArthur and my wife attended as a Jewish woman. So I too would like to be there this evening, and I think there has been a problem in the scheduling. It has been noted and it should not happen again. That is what I have received, but on that point, yes, I completely agreed. And I will come back to your point on when I go to the wider agenda. So if we can take Councillor MacArthur's question for now.
MacArthur, you'll be pleased to know that we've received notifications that the grants that we're expecting for next year will be coming.
And is it that's been signed?
Any further questions on the MTFS? I will move on to the wider agenda. Councillor Hall, you have the first question. Would anyone like to ask another question for the wider Councillor Henry? And any further Councillor Hayes? Thank you very much. So Councillor Hall, Councillor Henry, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. I wanted to say the savings on transport for children seems quite ambitious. I wondered, of the personal transport budgets that are being offered to parents, I recall back when my son was being taken to school on transport, I was asked as a parent if I'd like to transport him myself. So how long has this personal transport budget been on offer? What's the take up been so far? And what's the consultation been with parents? And how have you calculated the likely take up? Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I scribbled a few little things down and I hope, what I'm going to say makes sense. We understand the value of school working together with all agencies. Can we be informed of the type of agencies this work takes place with? And it can be anybody answer my question.
And Councillor Hayes.
Thanks, Chair. I'm pleased to see that we to see how much has gone into the delivering on our key actions, especially ensuring all new and existing buses for Sen Transport will have CCTV installed within the calendar year. I mean, that said, I've sort of raised this before, but I must say, I feel a little bit ambivalent about CCTV, full stop. So good to see the progress, but is there a period when we wipe the CCTV? I'm not sure I can answer that. Okay.
That might be one for the director. I'll take the first two questions to the finance to the cabinet member and to the director.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Hayes. Can you repeat Sorry, do you mind repeating? Apologies, I missed the thread.
We understand that the value, we understand that the value schoolwork together with all agencies. Can we be informed of the type of agencies this work takes place with? So, you know, school working together, so, you know.
And then there was also Councillor Hall's question on school transport savings.
Thank you, Chair. So, just to provide the assurances that the question about the personal transport budget is not where the savings will be coming from. So, Christina, do you want to elaborate?
Thank you. So with regards to whether this is ambitious, we are confident that we will achieve this saving based on the results of route optimisation exercises we have already undertaken. What we will be doing is increasing the frequency of those exercises in order to be able to maximise savings. With regards to consultation, we are not making any changes through the route optimisation work to our eligibility criteria. So therefore, we're not consulting on it, but to give that assurance around personal transport budgets, we will always have a conversation with families around personal transport budgets about whether that's the most appropriate option for them.
And then I think Councillor Henry's question around partners that work with the schools, and can you have some details about what that looks like? Elizabeth, if you want to come in, please do, but I would be suggesting that we answer that with sending you a briefing on the agencies that work around school. Elizabeth.
Yes, so as a starter answer, there are a significant range of agencies that will work with our schools across the partnership, which could be characterised of education, health and care. So I will give an example through our family hubs. We have got some really successful work where our schools are using the resources, the 28 services delivered through our family hubs, where there we've got co-located health services, support for families to access benefits from the DWP, those sorts of things. They will also be working with their own community voluntary sector partners, so in the very close locality to each of their schools. And then in the statutory space, or maybe the space where children might need significantly more support, clear partners would be, again, within health, our CAMS partners, where children or young people are suffering from ill mental health. And also obviously children's social care in terms of keeping children safe. Councillor Henry, I hope that's a helpful starter.
I'm sorry, actually, two of my questions weren't answered, which was how long have the personal transport budgets been on offer and what's been the take up so far? Thank you.
I'll come back to the officer.
Thank you for that reminder. And if we may, we'll come back to you with the details of those two specific questions, Councillor.
Put that in the action log to be added.
And there was a really helpful question referencing the good work of our local authority designated officer and the report that is in the pack tonight. I almost want to wait to answer that question when the Lado is in the room, just because I think it's really encouraging for him to hear how our councillors view the interventions and recommendations that he's made to us. And Chair, if you're in agreement with that, could we hold the answer to that question when the Lado report is considered?
Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take that under the Lado. Next round of questions on the wider budget. I had Councillor Femu, Councillor MacArthur, Councillor Flack.
A reduction in the services that they receive at the moment.
Councillor MacArthur.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got two. One is to do with the education and health participation and engagement proposed saving. And one of the things it says, the team will secure support from other services to run events for children in care and the annual residentials. How can we be sure that that will be secured as a future, that we know that it will? And the second one was there may be an impact in the borough that young people have less voice. I know the cabinet members think that's incredibly important, has been very encouraging of young people having a voice. So I'd like to hear his view on this particular saving proposal. And my other question is to do with whether the ICB have now agreed to the joint funding proposal with regard to them.
As that was a 3 questions, I'm going to, Councillor Flack, I'll come to you start of the next round of questions, cabinet member, and then I will come to the cabinet member, the other cabinet member.
I just want to remind councillors that we're here for the second round of savings. You're asking questions about the first round. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you asking those questions, but just a little reminder. Thank you.
Did ask questions about that, the ICB in the first round.
Yeah, we did. So I'm
Councillor Flack, Councillor Flack, the microphone, please.
I'm not.
Just to clarify, we did ask questions about it in the first round, and
I'm not stopping. I'm just, so there's an acknowledgement that you're asking. I'm not stopping you. You're asking questions about savings that were last time round. That's all.
And were asked about last time and not on.
Yeah. Okay.
Cabinet member, because I suggest this be taken in exchange after the meeting via email, one-on-one, and the answers be delivered then. Thank you.
In response to Councillor Femi's question about will students in the virtual school receive a reduction in service, no. We've been looking carefully about how we configure our services, and it is the configuration and how we use grants to be able to ensure that support is maintained. So no, they will not receive a reduction. With regards to participation, so Councillor MacArthur's question about participation. This is, again, I'll refer to the fact that in CLLF, we work very hard to deliver our savings, and we work hard to deliver our savings in a very careful way. It is acknowledged that with potential reduction in terms of staffing to be able to support the participation work, we are going to need to plan for how we skill up our broader workforce, whether that is our social workers, whether it is our SEND officers, to make sure that they are taking all the opportunities they possibly can to hear the voice of children and young people. So it's not just a delivery of the saving and that's it. We will be working with that broader workforce to enable them to hear the voice of children. I hear your point about will it result in less voice? We are going to work very hard to make sure that it will not result in less voice. We are very proud about the voice of our children in Merton, this is, for example, I'm just going to use another example with regards to SEND. We continue and will continue through various different organisations, including our ICB partners who are collecting the voice of children and young people, to make sure that their voices shape our services and they feed back on what's effective for them or otherwise. And I think, Councillor Quessa, there was an invitation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think you made that point very well. So I don't have much to add other than to reiterate, not that I need to this committee, because I'm sure you'll recall from my time as chair of CYP how much I value hearing from our children and young people. It's why I champion the Youth in Scrutiny initiative. It's why I attend so many youth-focused events to hear from the voice of our children and our young people. And as Elizabeth made very clear, the youth voice is something that we do really well here in Merton. It's something that's been officially recognised, most recently in our Ofsted inspection, where we got outstanding, and there were specific comments around how well we engage with our children and young people and how their voices shape the services we deliver. So that is something that is an absolute gem for Merton, and it's something that I don't want to compromise or diminish, and none of our officers want to compromise or diminish. And so what this saving provides is an opportunity to look at how we gather the views of our young people and expand that work beyond the current engagements that we do, looking at digital engagements, meeting our children and young people where they're at, and making sure all of our partners are also engaged in hearing that youth voice, not just the council, but all of our other partners who also do direct work with young people are involved and contribute their labour in making sure that our children and young people are shaping their services as well. And so I know this is a saving, but it's a saving that's been done in a way that does not diminish the youth voice, because that's not something I would stand for. So you can be assured that we are not compromising the youth voice with this saving, because it is absolutely important.
Just ask then, it says there may be an impact in the borough that young people have less voice. Are you convinced that was not the case? They will have the same voice.
I can assure you that as long as I hold this post, I will do everything that's within my power to make sure that we continue to listen to the views of our young people and that their views shape the services that we provide. I can absolutely assure you of that.
Director, you wish to come in?
Thank you so much, because this is a testament to how much we prioritise hearing from children. I'm expecting this to be a subject to scrutiny and for the stern questioning to make sure we don't lose the very thing we have prioritised as a value to us. And I want to try and illustrate how we feel this will work going forward. From a live example, just yesterday, Chair, if you would permit me, we had an opportunity to speak to some GPs. And as we talked to them about the Family First Partnership and the transformation, we put the question around how will you ensure, more than the medical information you share about Bev, how will you ensure that that child's voice is also shared with us when you are sharing information with social care and other professionals? And I was expecting it, but not to the degree that we received it. The feedback yesterday was that they think that that has been something they've always wanted to do, and the reforms and the way forward around ensuring the voice of children are captured in services they are accessing is something that is dear to them too. So there's something about what we've done in Merton has made this an easy one for us to have those conversations with the range of professionals. Now, the comment around the likely impact is something we must do. It's an EIA. We must set out potential risks, and our job as the people leading the services on your behalf is to mitigate and make sure that those risks are not realised. I hope that helps.
Next round of questioning, I had Councillor. ICB funding.
So I'm going to refresh on the question because I'm so sorry to hear that the answer that was provided the last time you felt was asked and not answered.
It wasn't answered in the sense that we didn't have confirmation that the ICB was going to provide the funding. You said it hadn't been signed. Well, clearly, if that's going to be half of the funding, we need to know whether that's been signed.
So, Councillor MacArthur and all, we have been working with the ICB for a year, led by with the kind of very insightful expertise of the directors to ensure that we have 11 priorities that we're working with the ICB on. Now, we all know that there are colleagues in that side of the world are really challenged. They're going through some uncharted territories, but it's always my experience that we stay with our partners and work with them through the difficulties so that those 11 priorities are going to be protected and will continue to move towards signing on the dotted line. There are some processes that we need to make sure are in place. One, we need your agreement, otherwise we can't sign on the dotted line. We also need to ensure that in the restructure for the ICB and our regular meetings with them that our priorities are theirs. And for the areas that we've identified as part of this saving proposal, these are their priorities. But if you ask me today to give you the dotted paper with the signature, I couldn't provide it because we need your support to get it over the line.
Sorry, can I just say then, we're, as a committee or as a panel, saying that we are agreeing to 165k of saving on children's mental health services, which, if it's not signed off, will be made in somewhere, because you've already said the saving will be made. That's what you said at the last committee. Now, sorry, is that?
We are confident that for this reason, taking the CAMS example, the funding that comes into the local authority comes from DSHE, and it goes through the ICB to our CAMS service, who have the duty to meet these needs. What we are saying is we want to enter into an arrangement with you so that we don't have a separate arm of the service held within social care and paid for against the general fund, but we prioritise the children who most need to be known and embedded within the CAM service, seen by yourself. And that's where we are advancing. Now, we have a series of conversations that we're having, but nothing has been signed yet because good officers don't get into contractual arrangements until things are signed off. But we will, we know the need will be met because the grant that was previously years ago given to children's is now, we lost that and we continued the service, but from the general fund, and we want to reset that imbalance.
I asked the question last time. You said that if the 165 wasn't met by the ICB, then it would be met by cuts, and that's what you said. Now that's what I'm trying to clarify, because I certainly wouldn't be happy at saying a budget saving of 165k can be made, and that might mean cuts in the service, and I wouldn't be happy with that, and I'd like that to be noted, and the committee might want to note it as well. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Come to the cabinet member.
To come in on this, as I said, all the savings in round one were agreed by this committee, and happy to have the discussions, but we can't go back on savings agreed on first round.
Even if we were told that we were waiting to see if it was going to be signed, so how could we possibly ask for clarification?
You've had the clarification. We're confident this will happen.
I would like it to be noted that I am not happy with agreeing to a saving of 165k in mental health spending, which might or might not be funded by ICB. Can that be put to the committee or not?
Chair, we cannot put to the committee a saving that was agreed in first round, but we can minute your concerns.
Will that be minuted on behalf of the Lib Dem group, please?
We will minute it as such. I will pass now to the Finance Director.
So just to add to what Bev said, you know, savings do go through a process of agreement and a view on whether they are deliverable. These are seen as deliverable for what quite rightly Bev has said, and you know, Bev has clarified as we sit here and now that agreement isn't in place, but this is setting a budget for next year on the basis of information on in terms of liability and contribution that should be extended beyond Merton Council's funding and statutory responsibility. So this does meet the threshold of something that is put forward on the basis of what we believe is an obligation on behalf of external partners to fund, and this is what's been put forward on that basis.
I'm going to move to the next round of questions. I had Councillor Flack. Were there any other questions for this final round? Councillor Hall. Councillor Flack, then Councillor Hall, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thanks. The restructure of the needs, was in My Futures, it seems to be that there'll be a heavier reliance on the school provision. I'm just wondering what assessment's been done to make sure the schools can fulfil this, and what will the council do to support schools just in case they're not able to fulfil that gap?
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the education and early help services. I understand that we're realigning spend from the general fund to the DSG. where are we losing the money to fund this? And the report states the characteristics of the workforce would need to be analysed to understand the equalities impact. I just wondered why that hadn't been done to date. Thanks.
That's a flag, sorry. With regards to your question about My Futures, so the support for NEET young people and those who are in danger of becoming NEET. You're right to say that we need to work more closely with our partners, including schools, but also the partnership in South West London, which works with schools to support them to think about how they themselves are supporting those children who are at risk of being NEET. It is also about aligning again our services, because it is not the officers who work with our young people. My Futures are one of those workers, but for example, they may well indeed have a social worker. They may indeed have somebody from one of our other services. So it's making sure, again, the responsibilities for understanding the risks around NEET and how we support them, those young people, into work. It is about working together. Support for our schools, I'm really glad to say, remains strong in Merton. You've heard some of that, I think, in the school standards panel and how we work closely with our schools. So there will be some support for schools to be able to ensure that this happens, particularly around careers advice and guidance. I hope that answers your question. And then in terms of the education services and maximising grant, this is about maximising use of the dedicated schools grant, the DSG, and it is about looking at what responsibilities can be paid for from that source. It's a relatively small saving, as you will note. So this is, if you like, a little bit of tidying up. In the longer term, actually, we have identified that because there are because actually the posts are vacant at the moment, it is not going to impact negatively on particular groups or protected characteristics. That's the whole. I hope that is sufficient.
I would like to. Oh, Councillor Hall.
Sorry, I've got one final question, which is about the Family First Partnership.
Okay, before you say, any final questions? Okay, Councillor Hall, I am taking this as the last question on this agenda item.
Okay, so I note that there's an 830k Section 31 grant for family help teams, etc. Can I just check whether that's just for 1 year and what will happen in subsequent years if we don't get any further grants?
So Councillor Hall, the Family First Partnership earlier is part of the indication that we've already been given that the grant for helping us to roll out that transformation will be given to Merton.
But future years?
We have confirmation for next year, or for 2 years, 3 years, excuse me, for 3 years. We've got confirmation that the Family First Partnership grant will be given to Merton for 3 years.
Okay, that's very good news. Thank you.
Cabinet Member, Finance Director, any final comments you would like to make?
I'd just like to thank everyone for their input into this meeting of the second round and this particular portfolio. Thank councillors and thank officers and directors. Thank you very much.
Likewise, we'd like to extend our thanks to you, the Cabinet Member, and to the Finance Director and to your teams. Thank you very much for attending this evening. We will move on to the next agenda item, agenda item 5, the departmental update. As usual, I will ask if there are any brief comments to be made, and then we will go straight to questions. So to the Director, would you like to make any brief comments before we head to questions?
Simply to say that the departmental update just gives a current position since the last scrutiny, and because of the agenda, I am suggesting that we would move straight to questions and treat the report as read.
Many thanks. Questions on the departmental update? Councillor Kirby, Councillor Austin, and then I have one myself. So I'll start with Councillor Kirby.
First of all, to say a lot of work goes on in your department, and it's a lot of good news in that report. So it was lovely to read. I just, there was I think it's in 12.9, when you're talking, I thought you've got gold level UNICEF baby friendly feeding into, this is about obesity. I thought that was really lovely seeing that there. But what also I found interesting was the 1 of 2 health visiting services in London. Is that? I'm surprised that there's only 2 health visiting services in London.
I'm going to invite my colleagues to just to confirm.
I'll just go to the other questions and then we go to Councillor Austin.
Thanks very much. And because I have a question on things that are outside of our control, a lot of what you references in the report, particularly in the glossary, references many delivery partners which are integral to the provision of many of the different services, with that sort of Best Start in Life, FFP, etc. I have a question on how we mitigate the risk, or how do you mitigate the risk to the changes in their circumstances? So what happens if a partner capacity changes, if their funding falls away, and which of the services that you referenced in the departmental update do you think are most at risk from problems that partners may face? Thank you.
And then I had a question with regards to seeing on the overweight and obesity numbers becoming lower than the London and England average. I just wondered if there was any correlation with the borough sport initiative that has been taken up by the council, to see what effect it's been having, if that has had effects on the overall numbers, what contribution has been made. So we'll start with answers to Councillor Kirby. Thank you.
They got the award last year and were reaffirmed as being gold level standard last September, October. So they're maintaining that level of quality of service in the borough. I'm grateful.
And then on the question around how do we support the things that we're responsible for and the things that we have authority over. And this is the business of partnership. If we set out our map around the levels of partnerships that have sustained themselves to function effectively in Merton, we've got a strong story to tell. And some members around the table are actively involved in some of those partnership networks and can give their own testimony about their views and judgments about the effectiveness. You're quite right, sir. In looking forward, we anticipate there's going to continue to be challenges. I know that if you look at the Met's direction of travel, they are reprioritising the areas that they will absolutely work with the local authority on. They will have their safeguarding leads on our partnership board. They will have the work with us on the new multi-agency child protection hub. They want to do it on a regional care regional footing, so that the one BCU that we share with others, that we have a core offer from the police as part of them being able to sustain their engagement in the multi-agency partnership, child protection partnership longer term. So as we plan and design, we are thinking a decade. We're not planning for the next year. And the work that we're doing with our health providers through the ICB and through other agents is also adopting the same methodology. So I wish I had something more scientific to say to you about we're going to apply this theory of change and this model of implementation, but I think that with the agreements that we have in place beyond the individual people, this is our approach, and our governance structure allows us to have very open conversations about what change means for them and early alerts around what impact that will have on what we've agreed to deliver.
Thank you. I'll just pick up the one about the levels of obesity being lower than London and the Borough of Sport. So obesity and overweight is multifactorial in cause, and so there are lots of different things for every child that affect their weight journey in their lives. So one of those is physical activity, and the Borough of Sport could play a part in that, but you can't measure it specifically. You can't link it directly to children's weight, but we do see good participation in physical activity in Merton, and therefore it's a part of a very complex picture. That's what we can say.
That's much appreciated. Thank you. Further questions on the departmental update? Councillor Hall, Councillor MacArthur, Councillor Flack.
Thank you. I had a question about Bedlesford. I note that they need to provide 72 extra places from September. I just wondered if that will be met, if they'll be able to meet that capacity, and if they're not able to meet it, is there a contingency plan in place? Thank you.
Councillor MacArthur.
Thank you. I was looking at 12.9, but it says 22 businesses signed up to the healthy catering commitment, and I just wondered out of how many businesses, because it's sort of a random figure, I don't know whether it's a lot or a little, and what sort of businesses are signed up to it. Thank you.
Councillor Flack.
Thank you. So my question is also on childhood obesity. There's discussion of the sort of 2022-25 report initiative, of which seems to have had quite a good sort of outcomes in terms of banning takeaway within distance of schools, but I can't see exactly how that has directly impacted the reduction in obese kids in our schools. So it'd be helpful just to get an indication of the actual impact of that.
To address Councillor Hall's question around Bedlesford and the 72 places, we originally identified fewer than 72 places for this September, but thanks to really the strong, again, partnership work with Bedlesford, their flexibility, we've worked really carefully with them to check that we've got the space, they've got the space, we have the children, most certainly, so I think there is a significant confidence level in that they will deliver. Should something very extraordinary happen, we will need to think again flexibly and creatively about how we're going to meet the needs of those children. Thank you.
Who would like to answer the other two questions?
In terms of the question about the healthy catering commitment, 29 businesses is a relatively small number. The healthy catering commitment is a really good London initiative and programme, but the sorts of businesses that we're trying to sign up are those that are operating on the margins, the chicken shops and its takeaways. And what we've been working on is targeting those takeaways that are nearer schools, particularly secondary schools, where the children have agency. And this work's led by the environmental health teams across Richmond, Wandsworth. It was Richmond, Wandsworth and Merton. It's now Wandsworth and Merton. And we are continuing to invest a very little bit of money in this programme across the boroughs in the effort to try and encourage some of these businesses to reduce the level of salt and improve and change the oils that they use to cook with. It's a difficult programme, but every business that we encourage to change is a slight improvement, and that's how we're working in this space.
That'll be something that you're going to do moving forward with more.
Yeah.
Can I ask, just sort of following up on that, what sort of approach we're taking with encouraging more businesses to sign up to this? Is it sort of a carrot and stick approach? I know we don't have the necessary authority to force businesses to do these things, but how do we get them to engage? How do we bring them to the table?
Sorry. Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, one of the at our last healthy catering commitment meeting a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about precisely this issue, is how we can encourage more by getting a weight of businesses that sign up. So there is a whole piece of work going on behind the scenes as part of the South London Partnership, which picks up that precise question, but how we encourage a greater weight of businesses and incentivize it.
It'd be great to see any follow-up from that. If we can hear either on a report to an email to the committee members or bring to a later committee. It'd be great to hear more about that.
Councillor McCarthy. Double check. Can I recommend that we include this in our next departmental update? I think that might be a helpful place for us to position it. Then you could be sure you have a fuller answer at that next meeting in March.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. And to the final question.
Can I just check that question? I thought I heard takeaways. Could you just confirm the question for me? But I don't think Helen and I heard the same thing.
No, that's right. It was a sort of works as a follow up to Councillor McCarthy. So basically, what was there are sort of initiatives that were introduced,
yes,
which sound really great. But I was just wondering, actually, have we then? It doesn't appear that we've noticed a reduction in obesity amongst our kids. So do we have any data around whether or not it's actually worked?
Go back to Helen's earlier point that the programs that we need to put in place to make a difference are multifactorial. And though we haven't seen a reduction, we are unusual in seeing ourselves in a holding pattern when it comes to childhood obesity, and that's relatively rare. And what we need to get to that holding position before we can even start to see a decrease. In our update, we highlighted the new Eat Well, Be Active action plan and the whole range of actions that we'd like to take across the system as partners, all of us, to try and help children to eat well and be more active. And we said in our active that that's what we're wanting to change the narrative towards, so we can start to have less stigmatizing conversations with families and children about eating well, being active, and eventually making a more substantive change to the rates of childhood obesity. We've got some local agency, but we're also reliant on national initiatives, some of which have been quite delayed, but we've seen a bit around advertising. And there was another announcement this morning about how we count food and whether we can restrict more adverts. So we're reliant, it is a bit of a local agency, but also we are reliant on some government actions as well.
And I just asked then, as part of a department update that comes in future, that we get some quantitative data, just whether it's just it'd be really helpful just to actually see the impact of some of these initiatives. We hear a lot about lots of really good initiatives that the borough are doing. We very rarely get some hard data to show the impact they're having, and whether or not that's specifically just the stuff that the borough is doing or in conjunction with national government. It'd just be really handy to actually see some concrete outcomes.
I am in agreement with Councillor Flagg. I question how we gather the data and see the correlation. Whatever data is possible to get to us would be appreciated, but I understand the difficulties in these things. I think the Cabinet member wished to come in. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sorry I don't know your name, but you did say our obesity levels are lower than other London boroughs, and I visit schools on a weekly basis. And I have to say, because the topic of obesity is embedded in so much of what we speak about, I'm always quite surprised how few children do seem to be overweight. All our schools are very active in the early years, the nursery and reception. They have a lot of free flow, they're in and out. Those children are very active, and a lot of work goes on. Outdoor play and learning through outdoor play. And a lot of schools do the walk, run a mile daily. But seriously, in our schools, both primary and secondary, I don't see overwhelmingly obese children. It's not to say some aren't, and I quite agree with you that we want accurate data to support the evidence. that people are saying. But if you visited some schools, it was, I've just looked because people go on about it so much, and I find it's more older people that I find overweight than our school children.
The report does say that there are 3,600 kids across the borough that are either obese or overweight. So it is, I think, a valid line of inquiry, just to make sure that we've got the data to make sure our kids are getting the best start in life.
I'm not saying it isn't, but also with the BMI, a lot of people say how inaccurate it is as well. And I think that needs to be looked at to find a proper balance with it, because I know people who are very muscular and sporty and say, well, I overweight with my BMI, and they're not. It's difficult, but I think it's something we've got to take note of. We can't ignore it. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, I think it's something we look forward to hearing more of in the next departmental update. For a final round of questions on the departmental update, I had Councillor Hayes, Councillor Austin, Councillor MacArthur, and then we shall move to the next item. Thank you.
Bit of an observation, but previous, but just I agree with the whole stick. But anecdote is also evidence. You know, I know when people do sociological surveys, say, oh yeah, but that's just an anecdote, but it is. And also about the measurements, I agree with that, because when I get on the scales, I'm always convinced they're not quite right, you know, because they seem to make me bigger than I know I'm not. But just one thing that is significant when you talk about the holistic, that is poverty in men is lower than other London boroughs. And that's, you know, you can say that's just one factor, but I think that's part of it. And of course, in Maine, we have the peculiar statistical thing. We're like two halves, aren't we? You know, the west of the borough, more affluent, the east of the borough, you know, not as prosperous. And I think that skews our figures a little bit. But nonetheless, poverty in men is lower than other London boroughs, and I think that the fact that it just, you know, this is just my from the hip, so to speak. Pardon, no pun intended. Poverty is definitely linked to obesity. You've only got to look at the growth in poverty in the UK or the United States. If you want to see fat people, go to the USA. That, I mean, obviously, I mean, I've seen fat people in this country, but nothing like the good old USA. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes, for that diplomatic incident. Yes, I'm sure a comment from a London Borough Councillor will soon make its way to the White House. Councillor Austin.
Thanks very much. It's actually just a sort of adjunct to the commitment for the next department update on the 22 businesses across the borough. I'd be also interested to know, since there are 22, what they are and where they are. And thirdly, you know, what are the other third-party organisations, whether that be Love Wimbledon, whether that be, in my context, the Village Business Association, that we can also bring on board. I don't think it's negligence or lack of interest. I suspect the council has never really sat down with the local business community, perhaps at that level, to discuss the healthier catering commitment, because 22 isn't great. And there may be ways also councillors and local boards might be able to plug in businesses in high street districts. So it'd just be interesting to hear a bit more about your strategy or what you're doing on third-party engagement to drive up the numbers on the healthier catering commitment. Thank you.
Yes, and just to add to what Councillor Austin was saying, if officers feel free to approach councillors. I know, for example, Councillor Austin's work with the Village Association. If anytime you need someone to talk to, a contact, as local councillors, we often have quite good ins and contacts within the community. And yes, with the 22 businesses, that's solid data that we have, whether it can be shared just to councillors or in public, that's data that we can receive, and that would be great to have. Thank you very much. Councillor MacArthur.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, but I don't want to go on for too long. So I'd be interested to know more about the HAF programme, because that sounds very encouraging. And I think it's a really good idea. But maybe on the next meeting, to do with healthy eating, and also reviewing and updating the primary and secondary school catering. I just wondered how often that was looked at and what reviews and updating had already taken place to try and ensure school children are eating well, because I know that there has been already work done on that. My final one is just a comment, talking about physical inactivity in children and young people. On the other report we were given, 4.8 says in 23-24, over half of Merton's children were not reaching their recommended activity goals. I wondered if we had any updates on that.
Shall I go in first about HAF and a couple of points around that? So absolutely, we'll bring some more information about HAF and the activities that there are carried out there and actually how that's supporting the agenda. We can certainly do that. In terms of reviewing primary and secondary school catering, it most often happens when the contract is being renewed. So as part of the spec for the contract, there will be clear criteria put in there about healthy eating and supporting that active lifestyle fundamentally. And then the contract provider will be being held to those specifications throughout the term of the contract. I would say that there are ongoing conversations, making sure that, when you do go and you actually see those meals being delivered, can we see those salad bars? Can we see those healthy fruit options? Are children, are they being presented appetizingly to children? And we do get quite a lot of feedback from schools about that, and how we can work with a contractor to continue to make sure that that is there. In terms of the last point, perhaps to come back to Helen.
Thank you. Rachel and I will answer different bits. Just on use of anecdote, we do use anecdote and stories as well as data to help inform, everybody who works in this area to really understand genuinely how things are. And there is a relationship with poverty we see in Merton data as well. But we can tell you more about that when we have a full item in a future meeting. I'll just hand to Rachel.
The data that there's a source of that number is called the Active Lives Survey, and the children complete that, and they've completed 2 years worth of that now. The latest data shows that the activity levels went up by 3% in the last year, in terms of, and which we take as a positive sign and may be linked to the activities of the Barrows Board and the emphasis on schools being active. We can't say that's a causal link, but so we were very positive about that increase over the last year, but that data only came out relatively recently.
So if we're saying over half now, what are we saying? How many are not active or not active to the levels that you would expect?
So what this data is reporting on is the number of children who are doing 60 minutes of activity per day. 30 of which should be in school and 30 of which should be out of school. Very happy to bring back more information about that in a more full. We're asking to come back in the summer to Scrutiny with a much fuller update. And quite a lot of this information, actually in quite much more detail, is in the new Merton On the Move annual public health report, where you can see more of the breakdown of the data from the Active Lives Survey.
Anything further to add? Okay, thank you very much. Right, I would like to move on to the next agenda item, performance monitoring, agenda item 6. Bev, would you like to say anything, or shall we head straight into questions?
It'd be great if we just go straight to questions. So I take the report as seen and read.
That's much appreciated. Questions on performance monitoring. Councillor Hall. Councillor Femu. Take it away, Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to ask about the appeals. I wondered what the outcomes were of the most recent appeals and what overall the financial cost of appeals is to the council. Thanks.
Councillor Femu.
Mine is a statement rather than a question. It's nice to see that the 100% of the HCP plan were issued within the 20 weeks
which last time that wasn't the case.
Okay, to Councillor Hall's question and then briefly on the EHCP. Thank you.
So this is, I think, para 7.11 within the reports about this is SEN appeals to the first tier tribunal. Those numbers, just to confirm, remain very low for Merton. We have a low rate of appeals. The outcomes, it is difficult. I can't say, you know, X were in favour of families and X were in favour of the local authority, for example, and that is because many tribunal outcomes are split, for want of a better word, with ANAC. It may identify, for example, that the local authority should update the EHCP to include X. It would be very unusual for us not to have those sort of outcomes which are in favour of parents, because it takes a while to get to the appeals stage of the tribunal, and so there will have been changes in the plan which need to be made. So I can't tell you the outcomes, and likewise the cost. We absorb that. We have a tribunals and complaints manager who works very effectively, but we also absorb the cost of across our broader teams to be able to respond to those appeals. And if I may just comment on Councillor Firmis, thank you so much. That was in December. We worked very hard, and a huge congratulations to our SEN teams to make that happen. Early indications is that we are going to achieve 91% being issued in time across the whole year, which you've heard us say before is well above national averages. We await for that published data to be able to confirm it.
To the Director.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and for the questions. This committee might remember the very issue of tribunals coming up last year around the summer period, and there was some information shared. It feels like we're at the point where we want to have another update on to maintain the performance that Elizabeth has just explained. So we're more than happy to do an update to send to either in the departmental report or outside separately if there are more ones for consideration, but it will confirm what Elizabeth has just explained.
Thank you very much, Biff. Further questions on performance monitoring? Councillor Flack. Councillor Flack.
I just had a question regarding exclusions. It seems really positive that only 8 kids across the borough were permanently excluded last year. I know, sitting on the school standards, the work that some of those schools do to keep those kids in schools. I was just wondering if there's data on sort of fixed term exclusions, and how many of those they've had and how long they're often for.
Yes, so both with regards to permanent exclusions and fixed term exclusions, our rate in Merton is low and really well below national averages. I would particularly point out for secondary school age, where the national trend is exclusions are increasing, the rate of exclusions is increasing. In Merton, ours is actually getting lower over the same period. So some of that data will be in the school standards report, but also I'm referring to very live data. So our most recent monthly data would show it's running well below where it was at this time last year. Obviously, you know, it is due to the really strong work of our schools and with the support of our education inclusion service in particular. Thank you.
I have. Okay, and Councillor Austin, Councillor MacArthur, any further questions? No, and then we'll leave it there. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I couldn't see this in the minutes. So apologies if it is in there. I asked in September Council about how the Council discharges its obligations that it signed up to under the Armed Forces Covenant, which effectively creates a protected characteristic around service connected families, around housing, around wellbeing, but also around education. And I went back to ask when this came up. I went back to watch when I brought this up at the last meeting, but sadly the audio wasn't working. So I can't remember quite what I asked you for an update or what the response was. But since this is on performance monitoring, again, it sort of asked the question, how do we collect data, or do we not, across all of these areas, whether that be school exclusions, etc., to ensure that we monitor the service provision to those children who are from service connected families? Thank you.
Thank you. This is just something I came across. It's a charity called The Difference, which supports schools across the country to realise sort of inclusion. And I was just looking at it, it looked really good. And I didn't know if it's something that you'd come across and would, because I know the applications are until February. I just wondered if you'd come across it. I'm sure you have, but I just wondered.
That's if I may come in there and maybe address Councillor Austin's question in a moment. Yes, we've heard of that, and I would say that we'd want to be making sure that schools are aware. We'll just make sure we flag it again for schools. Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on to.
Chair, did you want?
Oh yes, please. Apologies.
A report put together and shared, and we'll recirculate it after this, before the end of the week.
Thank you. The reason I asked this is I was pretty astonished to learn that this authority, this is from one of the housing charities, was saying that this authority has one of the largest, it has the largest number of veterans of any local authority in the country, including the largest single housing estate. So I don't think it is. I do think there are potentially hundreds of children, of younger people who are this may be affected. We've just never seen any data to look at scope. And again, I said on efficacy of provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. We will now move on to the Lado report. John, would you like to make a brief comment before we head to questions? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I was just really going to provide an overview of the report, the 2024-5 report, just with a look at some of the key sort of themes and activities and trends. I mean, just a quick reminder that LADO receives referrals where there's concerns that a member of the children's workforce has harmed or may have harmed a child or poses a risk of harm to children. The role provides advice, scrutiny of investigations by employers, and coordinates a multi-agency response to the allegations. So I don't know if you want me to go through the report. It's probably about 10-15 minutes, or said a brief comment before questions. So I'm not entirely sure. If you want me to go through the report, I'm happy to do that.
I think we'll head straight to questions, John, if that's okay. Yeah. I see Councillor Hayes. Any other questions straight off the bat for the Lado report? Councillor Hayes, go ahead.
I asked this question before, but I may have misplaced my question, so I'll do it again, Chair, with your permission.
Go for it, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see that how much has gone in this year to delivering our key actions, ensuring new and existing buses for Sen Transport will have CCTV installed within the calendar year. So I don't know if you can give us any more information on that. But the other thing, I mean, I'm a bit, maybe like a lot of people, I'm a bit ambivalent about CCTV, particularly when it involves children. So is there any, somebody has told me, but I'd like to hear it from yourself, that how long is that video stored and when is it deleted? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't give you the specific detail. I do know that in terms of how long it's stored for, because different organisations have different protocols around it. But I know it's been extremely helpful for us in clarifying, you know, what's actually happened during incidents. And I mean, I'm like yourself. I think, you know, in an ideal world, we wouldn't want that. But there's incidents that happen in nurseries. We saw what happened in Twickenham. The nursery there, if it hadn't been for the installation of CCTV, those incidents wouldn't have been picked up on. We've also seen a number of referrals in residential homes in Merton about a small number of children, usually from other local authorities with very complex needs where there's allegations of excessive restraint. And I would never argue that those that the CCTV should be obviously in private spaces, but certainly in communal areas, maybe there's an argument for that given the number of referrals that we've seen. So I mean, I think, and the other part of the question was on the CCTV on the buses. I can't speak for SEN Transport, only to say that I asked for an update from commissioning yesterday and was told that the decision had been, I don't know, Bev or David, if you've got more accurate, up-to-date information than me, but I was told that the go-ahead for the purchase of the fleet had been given, and so those buses were going to be purchased with obviously with CCTV already fitted, but there's been the go-ahead given for the installation of CCTV on the buses. I've asked for an update in terms of a timescale on that, and I haven't been provided with one yet, so that's all I can say on that. It's a source of frustration because I think, and the other thing I was going to say on that was that I think it's the taxi companies as well, where there is no CCTV installed within taxis, that transport a significant amount of our young people who have got additional needs and disabilities, where there is when there is an allegation, most of them remain unsubstantiated because we can't really corroborate what's happened. And with the best will in the world, there's CCTV on public transport and in lots of other areas as well, which is managed. So I think for me, the area of taxis is still a gap.
Just 1 second, Councillor Hayes. I believe the director wanted to come in, and then I will come back to you.
Thank you, Councillor. To support John's introduction around what's happening with the fleet, there was already agreement in the 24-25 financial year that we would move forward with equipping the current fleet with the CCTV. That's in operation. There is a clear protocol around use and disclosure and how long we must keep the footage in line with other safeguarding timeframes, that any valuable information that might assist the local authority should be kept. I suggest that separately, and perhaps through Councillor Kenny and Councillor Kwasi, we can send that information out if this committee is prepared to take it through the members, because I'm conscious that we haven't briefed our lead member, our lead members on this matter, and then circulate it more widely. Then there is the issue of the new fleet. Again, last year we CLF was able to confirm that the new fleet will all be fitted with CCTV footage. The challenges around the taxis accepted, the LADO's challenge is accepted, and that's more complex because of the way we engage and have contractual arrangements with the taxi services. But it is something that remains high on our agenda, and when we have something more concrete to present, I'd be happy to come back with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayes. Oh, thank you. Councillor Kirby, Councillor Flack, Councillor MacArthur.
Yeah, all I want to say is the next Senko, this is a really good report to read. It's always great when you've got a problem to be able to get on the end of the phone and find someone who really knows what they're talking about and give you the support you need. That comes across very, very strongly from this report. And it is a report for about last year. So obviously with nothing we can do about it, but it's a good report and a lot of work gone into it, and certainly well done to all the team.
Thank you.
Councillor Flack.
So mine's just sort of a clarification point. On I think it's section 3.1. It says there's been a 50% increase since 2020, but 202 to 204 is a 100% increase. Unless my maths is wrong on that.
Sorry, which section is that again?
It's 3.1.
It's 202 to 404.
Yeah. 50% increase would be up to 303.
So that's my maths is wrong. My apologies.
No problem. Councillor MacArthur.
Hi, so it's continuing with the CCTV, and your report recommends that CCTV be mandatory in all nursery and childminder settings. I seem to remember that was also something you recommended last year, and I wondered what the current coverage is in Merton.
Patchy would be the answer. Some nurseries have CCTV in place, others don't. There's no way of us really monitoring childminders. That might be a piece of work that we can do with early years. And unfortunately, those nurseries that have installed CCTV, usually something has happened which meant that they've gone down that route. So, and again, that was a piece of work that I was looking to do. We do like bespoke training with the nurseries, so I was going to get a sense from the training of just how many have installed CCTV. And I think the other thing that happened was off the back of the awful events in Twickenham and Hounslow, that some nurseries have decided that they're going to install CCTV off the back of that. But I can't give an exact figure, but that's something we'll look to get.
Thank you. I don't know if it's something that as a panel we could ask the Cabinet to write to the Secretary of State to support the petition that's already been submitted to call for the mandatory implementation of mandatory CCTV. I don't know if that's something this panel thinks is worthwhile. Maybe Councillor Hayes won't think that, but I just think it appears to be quite important, and it doesn't seem to be happening across Merton. I wonder if we could support the petition.
Which petition are you referring to, Councillor MacArthur?
Talks about.
Yeah, I don't have a petition. I know that there was a petition in relation to CCTV on SEN transport last year that didn't get enough signatories for it to be debated. But I'm not aware. I think there is a petition, isn't there, at the moment?
Yeah, it's in your report. Yeah. It says it calls for the implementation of mandatory CCTV.
Yeah.
I don't know, given that that's something you think is important, whether it's something this panel should be supporting or should be asking Cabinet to support.
Yeah.
And I'm happy if you want to take that away. If there is the official position of LADO that that's something you wish to support, then that could be taken to Cabinet members. But if that's something you want to come back to the panel with later on, that's completely fine. Any further questions for John? No, we'll take that away and we'll see where that goes. Okay, thank you very much, John. That's much appreciated. Thank you for your time this evening.
Okay,
we go now to item 7A, the social work reform. Bev, I imagine there might be something to highlight here, but take it away and we'll move to questions when you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that David and I intend to just talk to the document that has been added, and thank you so much for extending the agenda to allow us to submit the papers that you have. You may recall last year when we first got the indication that the new reforms would be prioritised by the DfE for implementation. And the document that you have is indicating the timelines for two significant changes. One, that they would like to see evidence that we are rebalancing the system so that we put more weight to preventative services that actually help children and their families stay away from statutory services, if I put it in those terms. They would like to see that we introduce things like a family group decision-making model, that where the wider extended family can be involved in making a plan should things not be going well for them in the families, in the parental ability to care for them, before we start to think around going to court and separation. I think that there isn't a practitioner across the country that wouldn't applaud that move. We know that children are better off in their families where it is safe to do so. So that's the first driver. The second area is for the children where we are having concerns around significant harm, not just all harm or any harm, but really defined as set out currently under the 1989 Children's Act, that we would work in a completely different way with the police and have shared commitment thresholds and decision making in the way we operate the child protection system. Now, I do put a caveat because generally the child protection system as is works reasonably well. If you look at the national reports on serious practice reviews, it's the children who are not supported by our partnerships who are more prevalent in those numbers. But this change starts to ensure that we think about models of co-location, that we think about areas that where we ensure that information is shared at the earliest opportunity, that we use that early information to intervene and meet needs at the point in time and not at the end of an investigation, and that the collaboration through the statutory partners, the police, social care, health, voluntary sector if necessary, and education are co-located, or at least have the ability to function as if they were co-located, to minimise any delays in formulating the child protection plan and having a lead practitioner that stays with the family for a longer length of time. So the paper before you really talks about those two strands. It gives you information about our governance structure. It tells you some of the work that we've achieved today. It sets out the timelines that we are working towards. In Merton, we want to go early with aspects of the reform, particularly around the prevention end. It feels right to do so when we're working with developing our child poverty strategy. We're working on the best start in life. We're working on the youth strategy. There's a few things that we're working together, and we want to see the synergy between them, and we want to take advantage of some external support that's been offered to us to help think about using that as a transformation piece to re-tilt and rebalance the system. So that's my brief introduction, but I hope some of the essence of that is copied is in the report. David, I don't know if you wanted to come in and add anything extra.
I suppose I need to just stress that we're not alone. This is obviously a national program, and especially Pan London, we're doing a lot of work with our colleagues to make sure that there is sort of alignment. So just today, I agreed to meet with all my counterparts across London to really sort of think about the multi-agency child protection teams and what they can look like. And last week, Friday, I was with a BCU colleague and my the other boroughs from Kingston and Wandsworth and Richmond, just thinking about how we can make sure we align services. And that's really important for the families that move across borders all the time. It's really important in London specifically that there is similarities in how we work, but still having the flexibility locally to understand the needs of our own communities and then how we're responding to them.
Thank you both. Sounds like a really good opportunity to take stock of what we're doing well and where we can make improvements. I would go ahead, Beth.
So, Chair, there may be some questions and observations, but what we really want we want to land today with some ask of members.
Okay, and in that vein, 2 members, questions. Councillor Hall, Councillor Henry. Councillor Hall, then Councillor Henry. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the report. Very clear. I'm looking at the risks on page 9 of the report, or 47, depending on which page number you're looking at. The lack of clarity over the long-term funding of the Families First programme once the initial investment of 3 years comes to an end. What are we doing to mitigate that? How much would it actually cost us to run the same programme from 28-29? Or is it something that we could
just not do?
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, and thank you for your report, Bev. A few things that I want to talk about, and one is not in the report, but I'll talk about the one which is in the report first. I am very grateful for the government providing, vast amount of money and extra funding that allows transformation for services for families. Considering Merton always has outstanding services, what are the other supports are there? And something which I'm quite concerned about, what supports are there for families who are suffering from impairment, say for instance hearing impairment or speech impairment, because we do come across families who need support, especially when they go to school functions and they cannot hear or speak. What support are there for them?
So David, Bev, who would like to take the questions?
Yes, David, I'm happy for you to take the first one. Thanks.
So on the funding, and this in some ways might answer parts of both your questions, but so it is a transformation of how we deliver the statutory functions within children's social care predominantly, and change it. I mean, Bev mentioned the rebalancing of the system. I mean, the two big things that are coming out of the ethos of the program is that rebalancing of the system, saying that over the years of austerity and cuts, we have seen so much of the spend go into the statutory services. So there is a need to rebalance that to be meeting that need at an earlier stage. Second part, which Bev also mentioned in her introduction, was the multi-agency and how we're working with partners. So specifically around the funding, we have our envelopes within the council, and this funding that's been provided to us through the grants is to go through that transformation period. So coming out the other side, the plan is we're using our envelopes in a different way, with the greater partnership input and different ways of working with families, like Bev was talking about family group decision making, family led decision making, engaging families in different ways. So the hope is that we'll go through this period, and from the other side, we're going to have a better way to meet the needs of the communities. So it is transformation funding, and I hope to get that on the other side, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry, I've got so just touching on the hearing impairment. Thank you for asking that. And so we have had training recently as part of our practice week around how engaging. So we've got our Children with Disabilities team, and the SEND offer is very sort of live and active. And I think one of the changes coming out of this is really how we practice within social care with a health lens. And so specifically talking about the hearing improvement in practice week, we had a session. I can't remember who the person that delivered it, but it was so powerful with the workers, and we are planning to undertake sort of Makaton training as well with practitioners, specifically within the children with disabilities, but also sort of other areas to get championing. So having those skills that they can communicate well with that.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
I did want to come back with one thing, which was I understand there's some voluntary and community sector organisations we're working with. Which ones have you been working with that can help to deliver the Families First programme? And are there more that you can approach to help?
Yeah. So Bo, I can't remember Bo's surname. Yes. Is sort of our link into the voluntary sector, and Caroline Castle, who prepared this paper. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but she's had sort of engagement sessions with the voluntary sector, and so I couldn't list with you the exact agencies that were there, but possibly what we can do, and maybe in the next in the next departmental update, is just do a bit of quite a specific sort of update on that voluntary sector and what we're doing to engage them. But I think as far as rebalancing that system and how we can support the third sector and voluntary agents to be better supporting our community is really key to the program.
I can see the cabinet member wants to come in.
Add to that point around voluntary organisations as part of our Family First partnership. Yes, there are some that are working with us on a strategic level, but it's not just those partners. We're actually in a position where this model has so much buy-in. It is the way forward for our family support, that we even have groups within the community that are approaching us to see whether there's a role for them within our Family First partnership model. Like quite recently, I saw some really good work from a group called Stand Up Fathers, which was just started by a local father who recognised that there's not enough emphasis on the role that fathers play in their children's lives, and so he started essentially a father support group, which operates outside of the Phippsbridge, well, inside the Phippsbridge family hub. And yeah, they meet once a month, and from the fathers I met, it was an invaluable support network, and they want to play more of a role within our partnership. And I've also recently been approached by the Mums with Bumps group, which is a great name, by the way, but I can't use it out of context, of course. Yes, so the point is there are so many incredible voluntary groups out there supporting families, but who also want to be part of this Family First partnership, because it is the way to provide that wholesome support to our families in a place that's where all the services are in one place and they don't have to bounce from place to place, from referral to referral. They can get all that support under one model that is easy to access and supports them when they need it. So from a cabinet perspective, we're 100% behind this model, and I've been nothing but impressed by the progress that's been made. And of course, we are constantly reflecting on the long-term structure of it, but at the moment it is certainly moving in the right direction.
Thank you to the cabinet member. I can only second his comments on Stand Up for Fathers. It's been great to see them active in our ward, starting as a small group and growing mightily. It has been great to see that. I had Councillor Austin, Councillor Kirby, and any further questions? No, Councillor Austin.
Thank you very much. And aside from the sort of final objective of the programme, there clearly is a lot of risks, some within your control, some totally out of your control, retaining my earlier point on the reliability of some of the third-party organisations, whether they are in authorities or voluntary or community-based, etc. My question is actually on sort of communications with those families. And there's lots of talks of sort of governance and delivery models and teams, and I see you was meant to or have devised a communications plan in August. I think the report says August 2025, and clearly there is a lot of systems focused language in this report. How are you communicating with residents, particularly to Councillor Hall's point, where with all these risks, some within your control, some without your control, it's not quite clear that the system change will actually be delivered on a long-term basis. And I'm just interested to know that, you know, when we devise these communication strategies, are they very much focused on internal council comms, but how do you communicate a potentially changing situation with families that rely on this and can't get bogged down in council jargon, etc. So I'd just be interested to hear a bit more about that communications plan. Thank you.
Councillor Kirby.
Thanks.
I just want to celebrate the fact we got 3-year funding for this. I mean, it is amazing, and worrying about what might happen 3 years' time could well be, if another government comes in and undoes all the good work we do, will be a bit of a disaster. I just say that I would like to wish you really good luck with the second phase of this piece of work. I think it's a fantastic endeavour. We are and got outstanding children's services. I'm sure we can do it really well. So, you know, it's all this nitpicking about what we might not do. Well done. We've got the money. Let's make the best of it.
Councillor Austin's question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. And so, you know, part of that comms plan was very much sort of internally and how to sort of work with the partners and everything and get them in and communicate that through. And so sort of addressing specifically your question, and it sort of goes back to one of the questions previously around, you know, participation and stuff. And, you know, it is part of the job of social workers and even practitioners to really sort of understand how people respond to our service and receive our services. So it is in some ways inbuilt into our day job. But I won't lie to you. How we engage with families and get feedback, especially in the context of children's social care around child protection, and you know it's a difficulty, and we're engaged in sort of Pan London and sort of regional meetings and stuff, and this is a difficulty that is going around the country around how to do that. And we do a lot of thinking about it within a project team, because it is absolutely key to how we develop our program and some of the ideas that we have. And I just want to caveat that these are ideas and stuff, and we're looking to but you know, using digital sort of responses, and we're talking about sort of QR codes and stuff. So when we're you know, when we're everything from sending out assessments to families that we're working with, to how we, you know, communicate them, trying to get feedback in that way, and using technology to see how quickly we can do that. It's in the infancy of how we do that, but we're also thinking around using our family hubs, and how we can get more sort of general feedback from you know, people who are accessing those and ideas around schools, how we can engage schools, and also groups that are already sort of freestanding. So the Kids First steering group, which works within the sender space, is a, you know, a parent group. So how we can engage them. So there's been lots of thinking and planning around that. So those are some of the ideas that we're having. But once again, maybe in future departmental updates, we can sort of update around how that is going.
Thank you. I was going to ask, is it possible in one of the, it needn't be the next one, but to go in a bit more detail on that communications plan. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? If you wish to come in.
If there are no further questions on the report, then I have an ask. So some of you would have read some in the media and heard conversations in various exchanges that you have as our councillors, that this is heralded as the biggest change since 1989, particularly to the child protection system. Scrutiny for me has a really important role here. Anytime that we're going to try and implement in the timescale that's been provided a change as significant as this, scrutiny, eyes on the detail of the changes is important. And some of the details that we would like, the first thing we'd like to agree with you tonight is that we will come back with regular updates, and that we will protect some time on the agenda for considered conversations about the process that we're following. We always appreciate the questions, but your ears and involvement with the community will also help us shape what the final design will look like. I think that we want to come back to explain the robustness of our governance process. We want to have a clear line of accountability, strong, that you are satisfied that there is strong safeguarding continuity, that you are happy with the metrics that we're putting together for the performance data in which we will measure the impact and provide assurances through those monitoring routes. We want to evidence that we've had meaningful engagement. In matters like this, it's not a consultation, it's engagement with the families who are likely to be most affected and who we know. and that we will ensure that the new model is implemented safely, coherently, and by that I mean with solid conversations with all of the key agencies, and within the statutory expectations. And so if you're with me on that, we want your agreement to bring it back, protected time to talk about the development, so we take members with us, and we can all be confident that we don't replace something that we've got outstanding for to the unknown, because scrutiny will be playing its role to help us get there.
Thank you very much, Bev. I think we can all attest to that. We have one meeting of this panel before the purdah period kicks in, as far as I'm aware, and as such, but that will need to be a focus of next year's scrutiny agenda. And I think we can all attest to that it will play an important part, and we will make sure that we carve out time in the committee for that. I see Councillor Austin. Any further questions? Councillor Austin.
Thank you very much, Bev, for that. I did wonder how on earth we were going to be involved in the scrutiny. We or successive members of this panel will be involved in the scrutiny of such a long-term, significant project, considering how complex it is, and you'll be reacting to things. Can I make a suggestion that, considering there may well be churn in councillors after May, and considering how important this is, that you consider including some information in the induction period for new councillors. It needn't be a standalone session, but this is really significant, and I'm sure councillors beyond this committee, one, need to know what on earth this is, and two, that these changes are coming, particularly new members. But I don't know who coordinates, if that's Democratic Services, whoever coordinates the whole induction programme over the coming months. I think this would be really interesting and useful for them to be involved.
Anything further from committee members? Thank you. Thank you very much, Beth. I move on to our final agenda item this evening, the work programme, and that's simply to say that if there is a particular focus or point of interest that members would like to raise on next meeting's agenda items, please contact officers, CCing and myself, and we will do our best to accommodate for the next meeting of the panel. But that's to say thank you to officers for their detailed reports this evening. Thank you for members for attending. It's much appreciated. And I'd like to thank